Are committing sexual acts a sin against God?
What do you mean by sin?
How bad argumentation gets repeated simply because the person who made the bad argumentation is granted some level of evangelical stardom. And so you've probably seen, it's not difficult to find. If you just look up Tim Keller and homosexuality on YouTube, I bet you it'll pop up. Just boop. An unbeliever was asking Tim Keller, probably in New York, in front of a primarily unbelieving audience, probably in a university someplace, just basically said, does homosexuality send you to hell? And so he obviously wasn't expressing the question in an overly useful or honest fashion, but this question was asked. Keller's response was, no, first of all, heterosexuality does not get you to heaven. I happen to know this. So how in the world could homosexuality send you to hell? And actually, the Bible, listen, this is true. Jesus talks about greed 10 times more than he talks about adultery, for example. Okay, so if you've watched it, you remember that Keller was clearly uncomfortable and he was clearly doing what he could to do the New York open-minded person thing. Okay? But there was the argument. First of all, heterosexuality does not get you to heaven. So how in the world could homosexuality send you to hell? Now, 8 years later, JD Greear, quote, let me say something very clearly. Homosexuality does not send you to hell. And here's how I know that. Being heterosexual doesn't send you to heaven. I mean, in terms of frequency of mention and the passion with which he mentions it, it would appear that quite a few other sins are more egregious in God's eyes than homosexuality. That was, I think, from the exact same sermon where he talked about God whispering about sexual sins and all the rest of that stuff. So the next year, of course, Ed Litton catches up in his plagiarization and says, homosexuality does not send people to hell. How do I know that? Because heterosexuality doesn't send people to heaven. That's in 2020. Now, aside from the repetition thing, aside from the doesn't anyone have original thoughts anymore problem, the fact of the matter is this argument is so bogus and was so bad when Tim Keller first enunciated it, it should have resulted in laughter. Not only from the person he was talking to, but from the audience. Now, I think the only reason they didn't laugh at it was because they didn't even begin to understand it. What is the relationship? Who is making the claim that heterosexuality sends you to heaven? Nobody has made that claim. From a Christian perspective, heterosexuality is God's normative, created purpose. That's what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 19. Pretty straightforward. That's how God created us. That's how God made us to continue as a people. And so he regulates that, and he places strictures upon how that sexuality is to express itself within the covenant of marriage and all that kind of fun stuff. But to even begin to try to make this argument, you would have to bridge the Grand Canyon chasm between the normative created status of heterosexuality and the perversity in the biblical author's language of homosexuality. You'd have to, okay, let's bring these together. Let me show you how these are connected. They don't do that. Keller didn't do it. Greear didn't do it. Litton didn't do it because he can't do it. It's a laughable statement. It is a categorical error on the level that just makes you go, how did he do that? And how did anyone ever think that was a good argument?
And I see other Christian churches taking very seriously what the Bible says about homosexuality, but in a very self-righteous way. So they actually do single out gay people. I mean, there are a number of conservative churches that will love their Hindu neighbors and will love their Muslim neighbors and not their gay neighbors. And I really don't think there is any excuse for that. So therefore, I have to take some responsibility of being a member of the Christian church for the oppression of homosexuals.
Are committing sexual acts a sin against God?
What do you mean by sin?
committing homosexual acts will get you to go to hell?
No.
I do want to apologize to the gay and lesbian community on behalf of my community.
I have to take some responsibility of being a member of the Christian church for the oppression of homosexuality.
Jesus representing churches will be known as the Friends of the LGBTQ community.
It's very misleading, actually, to say, even to say, homosexuality is a sin.
Stand up and be among the fiercest advocates for the preservation of the dignity and the rights of LGBT people.